All right, it is 5 o'clock, so I will call this meeting to order. Let's start with the roll call. Alder Ackley. Here. Alder Flicky-Pineski.
Here.
Alder Perella. Here. Alder Feldy.
Here.
Chair is here. We have 5 out of 5. Will you all please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, please bear with me about 10 seconds while I bring up board docs. Assuming I can type my password incorrectly. All right. If it's okay with everybody, we'll skip over introductions this time around and move right on to item 2.1, which is approval of the minutes. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? If none, we're looking for a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye and the ayes have it. Those are approved. And moving on, we are going to item 3.1, which is Report of Officer number 86 of 2122. Reporting that pursuant to Resolution number 60 of 2021, authorizing the City Administrator to negotiate settlement of certain claims made by the City of Sheboygan, City Invoice number 8001 in the amount of $21,930.62, billed to Sign Me Up of Wisconsin LLC regarding damage to a traffic control cabinet at 25th Street and Kohler Memorial Drive on the 25th of June, 2020. Has been settled with the payment to the City of Sheboygan in the amount of $17,460.48. The amount remaining of $4,470.14 shall be written off due to a negotiated settlement. Does anybody have any comments for this one? Thank you.
Here she goes.
Good evening. This is just a typical settlement that we have that Todd has the approval to go ahead and do. When we sent out a bunch of statements a few months ago, we had a couple insurance companies come back and try to settle, and this is one of them. So a vehicle had struck an electrical cabinet, and this is just the amount that Administrator Wolf and the insurance company settled on.
Any questions? Thank you. Seeing none, we are looking for a motion to recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's just a report, so it's to accept the report.
Okay. Would you like to amend that to
I
a
move
motion
to accept the report.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Next up, we have 3.2, which is a resolution approving the adjustment of the allowable city tax levy for 2021 payable in 2022 to Wisconsin Statute 66.0602 3F.
Hello again. This resolution is in order for the Finance Department to levy an additional amount that has previously not been levied. So every year on the levy limit worksheet provided by the state, we are allowed to levy for the carry forward from prior years that had not been levied. So this is the the 2016 is the big year for the adjustment, and that will fall off at the end of this year. So this is kind of our one time that we can adjust our levy and have that in the levy limits moving forward. So the adjustment is the $52,489.
Any questions or comments from committee members? Go ahead.
She needs a microphone. There you go.
Thank you. The unused levy drops after 5 years? Is that the reason that 2016 would drop off?
Correct. It's a rotating 5-year period, so every year on the levy limit worksheet that's provided by the Department of Revenue, you have 5 of the previous years that if you had any percentage not used in the previous levies, you can actually capture that in the year that we're filing. So for 2021, 2016 is the majority of this 52,000. So if we don't use it this year, it will drop off and we will not be able to take advantage of that.
So we would be able to use move the unused from 2017, 18, 19, and 20, but not 2016.
Correct. That would be the process for next year. I will say, I believe there's 2 years that had a 0% unused amount. So the majority of the 52,000 is from 2016.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we are looking for a motion to recommend approval.
I recommend approval.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further comments, well, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye, the ayes have it, and the motion passes. Moving on to item 3.3, which is resolution number 71 of 2122, a resolution expressing the Common Council's intent regarding funds received by the City of Sheboygan through the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund established under the American Rescue Plan Act and authorizing the expenditure of ARPA funds for administrative expenses.
Thank you. So bear with me, I'm going to go through this fairly lengthy IFC and just kind of give you some highlights on this. So in March of 2021, as you know, the American Rescue Plan Act was passed by Congress to deal with the negative effects of the coronavirus. Sheboygan was allocated $22.8 million under a federal block grant formula based on the percent of low to moderate income persons living in the city. In the first tranche of money, the city received $11,003,103, which is sitting in a money market account. The city established a new special revenue fund known as the Federal Grant Fund to track these funds independent of our general fund. We've been monitoring the activities of this very closely on what's eligible and what's not through the U.S. Treasury, and feel that the resolution we're bringing forward today represents the most up-to-date information that we have received to date from the Treasury on how to spend these funds. The Treasury has provided a list of 65 eligible activities. These funds need to be spent by December 31st of 2024. And they need to be shovel-ready projects to meet the expenditure deadlines. So looking at the list, the first project in the area that's highlighted in the IFC and bold is the actual item in the Treasury's list of eligible activities. So the first item, clean water centralized wastewater collection and conveyance activity, would be the Southside Interceptor Sanitary Sewer Project that a lot of you have heard about. From the Department of Public Works. The proposed allocation to that project is $9,950,000, and it's to upgrade that sanitary sewer collection at the toe of the bluff at Lake Michigan on South 7th Street that was constructed in the early 1900s and is currently under the water due to elevated water levels. Allocating funding to this project will allow the sewer users to see about a $67.50 per year or $22.50 per quarter of savings on their sewer bills. The engineer's estimate for this project is about $10 million. Funding this project would save the sewer utility from borrowing funds over a 20-year time frame. The next project is the drinking water, raw water intake project at the Sheboygan Water Utility. The recommended allocation is $9,550,000. This project is related to critical infrastructure to extend a new raw water intake line into Lake Michigan to provide a redundant source of water for the city and its wholesale customers. The engineer's estimate for this project is between $6 million and $40 million. An ARPA allocation of $9,550,000 would reduce the annual debt service by about $420,000, which translates to an offset of 5% of the utility's annual revenues, reducing necessary rate increases by about 5%. Over the term of the 30 years, the $9.5 million allocation would offset $12.7 million that would otherwise have to come from the utility ratepayers. The next item is aid to tourism, travel, and hospitality. Room tax revenue losses of $563,489. This would be to make up revenue losses from a baseline year of 2019. So all of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021. The room tax revenues in 2019 prior to the pandemic were right around 1.6 million. The total revenues collected in 2020 was just over 1 million. And the total revenues for the first quarter of 2021 were $245,642 compared to $271.98 from 2019. Per state statute, the city needs to provide 70% of the room tax collections to the tourism entity, Visit Sheboygan, and retain 30%. Therefore, Visit Sheboygan would receive around $394,442.30, and the city would retain $169,046.70. The next item is housing support under affordable housing. The recommendation is to allocate $2,076,511 to this activity. Regulations related to affordable housing are vague, other than it is an activity. If it's an activity in a qualified census tract, it qualifies. If outside of a qualified census tract, it needs to be attached to serving underserved populations and dealing with the negative effects of the COVID. The city plans to spend these funds in qualified census tracts as development incentives towards affordable housing projects and to purchase sites for new affordable housing projects. The next activity is a small business economic assistance. We recently operated a small business emergency assistance program to help businesses that had revenue losses during COVID. Previously, the city allocated $424,000 of federal block grant dollars to this effort. In August of 2021, these funds were depleted, and funding for this activity would provide grants up to $10,000 to 16 businesses and run very closely aligned to the current or the previous program that we already have policies and procedures developed for. And the last activity is administrative expenses of $100,000. We anticipate staff time of about $33,000 per year to be charged for administering loan programs, the documentation that's necessary under this act, and completing the quarterly and annually reporting requirements. So if you add that all up, that totals $22.4 million, and the majority, as you can see, is going into these two major projects that are on the pipeline for construction and some significant borrowing, and by reducing those costs, the ratepayers will see instant less rates on their water and sewer bills, so it makes a lot of sense to put it into the majority of it into those projects. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chad. Do we have any questions from committee members? Alderman Paneski?
The not housing support, small business economic support, will those dollars go to the block grant funds, or do they have to stay separately?
They have to stay separate.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Perrella?
What is the qualified census tract that in fact is mentioned in the housing support item?
In 2021, the qualified census tract would be basically from Union Avenue up to Saman Avenue. It's kind of a jagged, so Kiwanis Park is kind of the westernmost of that area, and then 9th or 10th Street would be the eastern. So it's kind of that central of the city. In 2022, the Southside, Indiana, Kentucky, those streets fall off, and they're not qualified under new 2020 census data. So it would only be an area primarily around Erie and 14th Street. So it includes the Kiwanis Park, and it goes up to Saman, and then Superior and kind of down 10th Street. So it's kind of the above the river kind of bulb, where at 14th and Erie would be the center of it.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then we'll be looking for a motion to recommend approval. Thank you, Chad.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Next up, we have item 3.4, which is resolution number 72 of 2122, a resolution authorizing the appropriate city officials to remove certain uncollected delinquent personal property taxes and uncollected accounts receivable from the City of Sheboygan's general ledger.
Thank you. This item tonight is to write off quite a lot of bills. If you looked in the packet, the pages are very long. It's an extensive list. But this item is really aligning with some financial reporting best practices and accounting best practices, where we should be removing uncollectible accounts from our books. We have been expensing them throughout the years, so this will not have a budget impact, but this will allow us to be more aligned with the correct process that we should be following, and in the future, we will be bringing this forward probably yearly to keep up with it. You can see there's parking tickets from 1998 that are still in our accounting system. So we're trying to clean this up as part of kind of our overhaul of looking at all the different aspects of finance. So if you have any questions, you can let me know.
Any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
1998 is a long time to keep an unpayable on the books. However, what's your plan moving forward?
Sure. So we are working with our purchasing agent, Bernie Romer. We are going out to RFP for a debt collector for the city so that we can start collecting on these in the future. I will say historically, there have not even been statements mailed out from the finance department, so we have gotten in that habit, and we will be coming forward in some future meeting to talk about penalties and interest on debts that are due to the city, because we also have not been charging that. So we do have a plan moving forward, but in order to give us a fresh start, that's why we brought this forward.
Will this committee get like quarterly or semi-annual reports of collectibles moving forward?
That is the plan, yes. We do want to make sure this is more of a regular occurrence, and depending on how much we end up needing to write off in the future, it will probably depend on or determine the amount we come forward with.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. We are looking for a motion to recommend approval.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Item 3.5 is resolution number 75 of 2122, a resolution establishing the 2022 budget appropriations and 2021 tax levy for use during the calendar year. And I believe 3.6 through 3.15 are all connected to that resolution, correct? What is the best process to go through those one by one?
You should probably skip 3.5, it probably should have been last, and just run through each of the.
Okay. Okay. Any objections about skipping 3.5 and coming back to it?
No.
Seeing none, item 3.6 is 2022 budgets, Common Council, and Office of the City Clerk, and elections.
Thank you. Okay. So the packet you have before you for our budget is actually a summary of the three orgs that we usually presented. So we usually presented three different orgs, and they're all combined for council, city clerk, and elections. And ours actually has a 5.4% increase from 2021, and that's pretty common because that has to do with the elections. So it's more in line with 2020 when we had 4 elections. In 2021, we only had 2. So if you look at the increases for our elections, it's due to overtime, our poll workers' salary, our labor that we have with DPW, our building maintenance, which is our polling locations, and office supplies. I would say the other differences in our budget, it was in contracted services. The audit that was normally in there has been moved to the finance budget. That was $28,500, so that's a decrease in our budget, but it's in finances. And also in contracted services, we usually have $10,000 allocated to the scanning of our documents. But because of the revaluation in Board of Review, which comes out of our budget, we had to increase our Board of Review budget so that we increased to $6,500, but we'll decrease our scanning by half this year to make up for that. Trying to think of the other thing that we did. In our office equipment, there's an increase of $2,500, and that is to include for a new mail machine in our office. We have been running on an old mail machine for the last 4 years, and it's time to upgrade that. But our legal notices, I decreased that in our budget to be more in line with what we normally spend. It was a little bit high. So everything kind of comes out. Any questions?
Alder Flicky-Panaski?
Explain to me again about the audit that went over to finance. When you audit in your department, what is it that you audit?
It was in the council budget, right, Carrie? And
So it moved to the council budget.
no, it was in the council budget and it moved to the finance budget where the audit takes place.
So what did council audit?
It was the,
I believe it was put there in the first place because it is, the audit is to management or the council. So I think it was put in there a long time ago, but we moved it to finance because it truly is the audit of the financial and preparation of the financial statements.
I guess
Cost is still
just-
there, just in a different cost center.
Okay, for clarification, the actual audit itself, though, it's the annual CLA audit that we get on city finances.
correct, but it was in the council budget and it just moved over to,
So your determination is that it is most appropriate to be in finance.
correct,
Thank you.
correct.
Any other questions? All right, we'll leave that one for action for now because we're doing Resolution 75 at the end, so thank you. Next up, we have 3.7, which is the 2022 budget for the Finance Department.
Hello again. So the finance departments include quite a few different accounts. In the general fund finance budget, you'll find the assessor and the accountant and the insurance liability organization codes, which are rolled up onto that summary page. There are a few significant changes you will see from previous years. As you can see, there was a 2.3 million increase, but that is due to how we are categorizing some of these interfund transfers and things. So one increase you will see is on the full-time salaries. We have the Payroll Administrator is now a part of the Finance Department. So portion of her salary is now in the Finance Department rather than HR or Human Resources. So that is one increase. The other increase, as we just talked about with the audit, is that there's the, that is now in contracted services in finance, and the revaluation with GROTA appraisals is also found in finance summary. So that is the big increase in the contracted services line. Sorry, it's really hard to talk with this. The other item you'll notice is that the contingency reserve It was previously $1 million in 2021, and it will be $750,000 for 2022. This is to cover unexpected projects or expenses that may come up next year, so that falls into the bucket of finance. There is also a wage adjustment reserve. As we've talked about previously, we have the Carlson-Detman study going on to help us determine how well we're compensating employees. And this account was set up and had money set aside so that in 2022, we can hopefully start implementing the plan that is provided to us from Carlson-Detman. Also, you'll see the $995,000 in the interfund to capital projects. That's a use of fund balance to pay for capital project needs that was approved during the capital project budget earlier this year. And then the other item that I just want to point out in the finance section is this fund equity increase of $910,000. That actually is a tool to allow the city next year, when we have expenditure restraint program restrictions on us, we're not actually going to be allocating these funds to anything, but it gives us the room in our budget next year if the amount that we are allowed to increase our expenditures by is very low. So in 2022, it's quite high compared to a normal year. So we're building that into our budget in order for us to allow for an increase in case there is a low consumer price index for 2022. That one might have questions if you would like clarification.
Yeah.
So that's the finance portion. I also am in charge of the Liability Insurance Fund, which had a increase just to reflect the current rates that were given to us by our insurance provider. And then the general obligation debt, in the debt service fund, that had a couple changes. The unfunded pension liability line has been zeroed out. It was determined that there's been a collection of fund balance in the debt service fund, and there's a sufficient amount that we can actually have that debt paid off over the next 6 to 7 years, through 2027, paid through fund balance rather than increasing the tax levy. It is a one-time type of debt that we issued, so we won't have to increase it in 2027 to make up that gap. So you'll see that the unfunded pension liability got zeroed out, but the fund equity applied is actually making up that portion of the revenue. So that is fund balance used. And then the final fund that finance is in charge of is the special assessment fund, which did not have any significant changes.
Oh, my.
Questions from committee members? Alder Flick-Wineski.
Okay, the category that you said, I can explain this again. Would you explain that one again?
Sure. So the city is under the Expenditure Restraint Program. We actually get about 2022 will be $690,000 from the state of Wisconsin. What that program requires of us is to only increase our expenditures by a certain amount. That includes a percentage of growth and also consumer price index. For 2022, the adjustment is actually quite high compared to normal. We had a 3% adjustment for CPI this year, which is quite unheard of. We all know how prices have fluctuated so much over the past year. So that's where that big percentage comes from. Historically, it's been maybe 1.5%, 2%, which then makes the city butt up against that percentage increase, and it makes it tough to balance the budget and stay within the guidelines that are required of that program. So because the percentage is so high for 2022, our financial advisors helped us to determine how we can capture that without actually increasing our expenditures by that much. So we're setting aside this money in the budget so that next year when we get a percentage increase, let's say it's 1%, we actually have this $900,000 cushion built in, and we can still increase because it resets itself based on your prior year's budget every year.
Thank you.
You can go ahead, one more.
The personnel, all the personnel budgets come out of the finance department and not the HR department?
The only person, so The only personnel-related position that's in finance is the Payroll Administrator. That position was previously under Human Resources, but as was discussed, I believe, last Finance and Personnel meeting, where HR and Finance have done more of a segregation of duties, the Payroll Administrator now reports to myself instead of Director Schneider in the HR department. So in order to properly account for that, we have moved that one individual's salary from HR to Finance.
Thank you.
Any other Alder Perella?
Would you please also readdress the point number 2 in the highlights of the FSI?
Sure. So in the finance summary pages, you'll see that there is an increase on the contracted services line, which is number 521900. And in 2021, it was a budget of $465,000. It's going up to $589,000 in 2022, and that is due to the revaluation cost that is with GROTA appraisals. That's built in now into the budget. And then the audit that was previously budgeted in the Common Council that Meredith referred to is now in the finance department. And the only other thing is in the number 2, we are looking at doing a new auditing firm to make sure that we're more compliant with all the requirements of that side. So it is recommended to switch auditors every few years, so that is expected to have an increase in cost since there are new auditors hoping to be on board for 2021's audit.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Seeing no others, thank you. And then we are on to 3.8, which is the 2022 budget for the Office of the City Administrator.
Hello. I'll present our budget on behalf of the City Administrator. Basically, pretty much nearly all of our accounts remain the same except for just a few key ones. The largest is a new account, a new initiative entitled Citywide Professional Development. So that actually has a $50,000 increase for a brand new program. This would align with several of the factors that Administrator Wolf has addressed previously, that there's been a significant lack of investment in employee education, training, expansion for their career development to be able to provide better services to the city in general. We did have, as in item number 2, all other departments did as well, increases in the IT services budget. There is a standard 6% increase, which is helping the IT department build some fund balance as we're moving forward with all these new technologies, expanded use of our ERP system, and moving to more automated systems that are working together rather than some of the older manual or the IBMI AS400 systems that we were using. Our office supplies did have a 10% reduction. We experienced a reduction in that. And then under professional organizations, we had a nominal increase resulting from a membership to the Economic Club of Sheboygan that had been taken out in the previous budget and then resubmitted in the 2022 budget. Any questions?
Oh, go ahead, Alder Perella.
Just please a clarification about the last point, the membership, the professional organization, 12% increase, just to understand what is that?
The account itself is professional organizations, so either the city or Administrator Wolf does belong to a number of organizations. The ICMA, the International City County Management Association, WCMA, the Wisconsin City County Managers Association. There's another one or two, but then this Economic Club of Sheboygan is a one that the previous administrator had joined. When we compiled the 2021 budget, we had removed it. And in 2022, Administrator Wolf will be rejoining that group.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Alder Flicka-Pineski?
In the training initiative, we've heard so much about DEI. Is that embedded in that particular budget line?
There is some of that component in here as well, because it's
Perfect.
citywide. It's for all cities, for all city staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you. And then we will move on to item 3.9, which is the 2022 budget for the Office of Mayor.
All right, good evening, alders. Overall, the Office of the Mayor's budget reflects a 13.3% decrease to 2021. Overall, it's a total savings to the taxpayers of $22,207, decrease from last year. Made a few changes during the transition. IT services, obviously, for all departments, has seen a slight increase. Our office sees a 6% increase in internal service fees. I discontinued the additional cell phone. As a millennial, I believe in work-life balance, so I just thought that was a good opportunity to save it. Take phone calls primarily from my office. If someone needs to get a hold of me, they can get a hold of me as well. So unfunded pension liability, as the finance director stated too, that was zeroed out. And due to, I believe, a previous employee, the retiree health insurance was zeroed out as well and sees a 100% decrease as well. So smaller budget compared to other departments. I believe it's the largest decrease in a budget comparative to other city departments as well. So I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions from committee members? Alder Perella?
Just a comment that it is not only a millennial's prerogative, the work-life balance.
Appreciate that comment, Alder Perella. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll just knock on your door instead of calling your cell phone. Alder Flicka-Pineski?
I've been here for a while, and I am recalling that historically, one of the mayors in our city's history declined part of his salary. Has that decline continued, or was it restored to what it had been previous to that particular mayor saying, I don't need this? Do you know the answer to that? I mean,
Can you restate your question?
Recollection of what we've done? Yeah, and maybe Chuck can
I
correct
guess
me if I'm wrong.
as
in
Chuck being the
2019 or 18?
unofficial historian, you can step
That's
in.
great, thank you, Chuck.
So when a mayor chooses to decline their salary, it doesn't change the budget. It's basically just given back. So that hasn't changed. You may be referring to the fact, though, that there was a cut in a particular mayor's salary, and while some of that has been made up, it hasn't been completely made up because we now have two people sort of filling the role of one.
So about how many mayors ago or how many years ago?
The cut was made when Mayor Ryan was mayor, but it couldn't take effect until the next election. Any change in salary to the mayor or to any elected official takes place at the time. It has to be done 13 months before the election, and it takes effect after they've been elected.
So it was Mayor Van Akkeren, the subsequent mayor?
So in the end, it would have been Mayor Vandersteen in his first term that was the first person to officially get the lower amount, because it took place during Mayor Ryan's term in office, and Mayor Van Akkeren finished Mayor Ryan's term in office. Now, realistically, I believe in that time, people gave back some of their salary to make up for some of those things. But the actual physical action has to take place at the time of an election. So the first mayor to officially have that lower salary was Mayor Vandersteen.
Okay, so basically, has our mayor and our mayor's position just even kept pace?
There was an increase to Mayor Vandersteen's salary beyond just sort of the annual increase, but it was nowhere near where it had been previously.
Okay,
So our current mayor still gets paid significantly less than, I believe his current salary is less than even the mayor's salary was when I started with the city in 1996.
pardon me, 1996.
I believe that to be the case.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, that answered my question.
Thank you, Chuck.
He's smiling under his mask.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Then we are on to item 3.10, which is 2022 budget for the municipal court.
Hi. So our budget has a basic effect of just a 1.5% increase. And that would be primarily due to just standard increases. So a 6% increase in IT fees. Every year we have to pay an increase for our court software. There's an increase in interpreter services just because we somehow managed to go a period of time without having much interpreter services required at all. And that's changed recently, and so we provide that now. And there have been, as you know, staffing changes, which have decreased the total amount that is paid for salaries. So nothing, there isn't really a lot of change in terms of our expenditures each year at the municipal court. I mean, we just have the basic, just to run the court in terms of office supplies, software. We pay a fee to the police department to use the courtroom. Usually at this meeting, I get asked about revenues and what those are going to be. And those have been consistent, even though there's been I would say about a 30% decline in citations that were issued. Our revenues have not been impacted. So the projected amount for next year is just 30,000 less than was for this year. I don't know if there's any questions.
Any questions from committee members?
I got one.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm the questionnaire of the day, I think. Okay. Is the decline in revenues, we were all sequestered for most of last year. Is that what you attribute to decline in revenues?
I'm sorry, I have a problem hearing in here, and it's
Yeah,
a
I know
challenge
a lot
for
of
me.
people do. The decline in revenues,
Yes.
because last year was a COVID year and we were pretty much sheltered in space and place. Is that the rationale for the decline in your revenues?
Right. So last year I had, and these forms are a little different than they were in years past, where I used to have the count, how many citations. But a typical year for the court, we have about 7,000 citations. Last year I had 4,000, so around 4,000. So there's a significant decline. And so based on that, you could usually predict that there'd be a similar decline in revenues, but that did not happen. So every year we have to try to predict what revenues will be. I don't know, because that basically means for the court, how much gets paid in forfeitures. So in order to come to that figure, you would have to know how many tickets are going to get written, how many tickets are going to get written and not dismissed, how many tickets will get written, not dismissed, a person will be found where they owe a forfeiture, and then they actually pay it. And so it's always a guess. And so we try to use facts such as how many citations have been written in the current year, how much revenue has come in based on those in the current year, and try to apply that to come up with a figure. But it's always an estimated or educated guess.
So are those people who have been fined and don't pay, are those part of the group that will be now recommended to a collection agency?
So at the municipal court, we have various methods that are used to enforce forfeitures or enforce judgments. We use state debt collection. We don't use a collection agency. We use the state. We tend to only use that for cases that are not a high dollar figure, so not necessarily building code cases, because with state debt collection, they charge a 15% fee that they take off the top. So if we would send a $100,000 building code case, they would collect $15,000 before we received $1 on it. So we tend to try to do other things. But we do use state debt collection. We do use driver's license suspension, and we docket judgments. And so that was a change that was made to the statute, I believe it was last January, just to make it really clear that municipalities understood that we can docket judgments without a fee. So that's something that we do, as much as possible.
Okay.
And then also just trying to come up with ways to make paying actually manageable. So payment plan. So everyone is given the opportunity to make a payment plan. They don't have to necessarily pay everything within the 60 days that it would normally be due by statute, as long as they're making an effort to pay it.
Are those folks aware that there is a payment plan at the time of judgment?
Yes.
Thank
So that's something that's explained verbally. So I explain it. If someone shows up at an initial appearance, I say it out loud. They're given paperwork that has it on it. And then it's also part of the court order. So on the bottom of it, there's a description of the ability to have a payment plan, and then how to do that. And then that's something that's on our website. And if anyone would contact the court office by phone or in person, then they're offered that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we are on to item 3.11, which is the 2022 budget for WSCS Cable TV.
Good evening. So for the cable TV budget for 2022, we will see a slight decrease of 0.6%. We are also estimating that the cable franchise fee revenues will remain constant to 2021. Any questions?
Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you. Moving right on then to item 3.12, which is the 2022 budget for the Information Technology Department.
Okay, thank you. So for the Information Technology Department, as mentioned before, we will see we will see a 6% increase in our revenues due to the chargeback that we're increasing to all the departments that we support. Additionally, we will see about a 4.3% increase in our services for 2022 relative to 2021. The highlights are under the computer maintenance account, that will be increasing around 44.5%. The majority of that will be to support our enhanced cybersecurity initiative, as well as some older equipment that is coming off maintenance that we'll need to put like it's coming off warranty, we'll need to put it on maintenance. Software maintenance will be increasing around 13.7%. That is to support a number of Munis modules that we are implementing MyCivic fixed assets and project accounting, as well as we saw a 5% increase from the vendor in this overall software maintenance. Our telephone and internet will be increasing around 57%. The bulk of that is to provide a redundant and resilient internet connection. Today, if we were to have a fiber cut in one of the laterals, it could bring down the city's internet connectivity. This will provide an alternative path to prevent that from happening. And then on positive, I guess our contracted services are decreasing around 11.6%, and that's due to a decreased need in outside services as our staff experiences continue to grow. Any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead.
So I understand the 6% increase is the result of the other budget, IT percentages increase, correct?
The 4.3%?
Yes.
Is due to, yes, mainly the cybersecurity project, as well as the other Munis modules that we're turning on.
That is the 4.3%,
The 4.3, yes.
right? And the 6% again is,
That's we increased the chargeback that we charge to
Right.
all the departments by
Right.
6% this year.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
So each department prorated in their own budget got 6%? I mean, there is a department of 1 and then there's a department of 54. So where did you get the 6%?
It's 6% across the board based on our projection of increases in software maintenance, initiatives of new software modules we want to implement, as well as continuing to try to grow our fund balance.
Okay, I'm still not understanding what the 6% is 6% of.
It would be 6% additional or increase to their 2021 charges that we charged. So if we charged a department $100,000 in 2021, it would increase 6% or $6,000. So in 2022, we would be charging them $106,000.
Okay, that's clear. How did that hypothetical $100,000 get configured? Is it prorated?
That is a very good question. As I understand it, that base number was calculated many years ago. And at that time, it was based on the usage of the AS400. And this was many years before I came on board. This year, City Administrator Wolf and myself did take a look at reanalyzing that chargeback and coming up with new criteria. But we weren't ready to do that yet. This year, we want to make that revenue neutral to all the departments. So it is something that we're looking at for the 2023 budget, is to come back and look at how do we, what should the calculation be for that chargeback? But it's based on a calculation that was done many, many years ago.
And we aren't going to be using the AS400 moving forward?
I'm sorry.
We will not be using the AS400 moving forward?
Our 5-year plan, which is now probably will be a 4-year plan, is to retire the AS400. There's just a number of legacy applications that still run on that. Some that support finance, some that support the police department, some that support the business licensing that the clerks issue. So we have a 5-year plan to retire those applications. So yes, the AS400 will be going away. That the new calculation will take, from a very broad perspective, will take into account the number of users that each department has on the system, the number of email accounts they have, the complexity of that particular department's security needs. We've identified a list of 29 items. We don't know if we're going to use them all or not. We don't want to make it so complicated that people can't follow it, but we also know we need to reevaluate how that was calculated because the AS400 is going away.
So you've piqued my curiosity. I have a spreadsheet that says we've got at least 57 websites and social media sites for the city. They all don't come out of one department. They're scattered over all the departments. So the complexity of what you do and the 6% that you charge back isn't 6% evenly throughout based on the AS400.
No. If you were to go look at the base calculation, and if you want, we can provide that, but I won't say it's evenly distributed, like based on the head count or their existing spend or their existing budget. I believe if I remember correctly, the police department probably gets charged the most, and then it's either the finance department or the fire station that is next as far as the total amount that they contribute to this, to the funding of the IT budget.
Okay. For my part, I won't belabor that point here, but I would appreciate a little bit of the rationale that between you and the finance department, I could kind of wrap my arms around this between now and next time.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Still my thunder at the AS400, but I do have just a couple. Well, actually, I guess I can still ask a question about the AS400. Seeing it in the goals for a lot of different departments getting moved off of that software. You said 4 years? Is 5-year plan?
It was a 5-year
looks like
plan
4?
started in this year, so we're hoping we can accelerate that. We're implementing an awful lot of new software solutions here, so it's that kind of balancing act to say, okay, is it worth our effort right now to remove an application versus going out and adding something new that has more benefit?
That makes sense. And then you mentioned the cybersecurity goal or initiative. Has there been any discussion on hiring a security administrator or something along those lines?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I can't get much closer to it. You mentioned that cybersecurity is an initiative right now. Has there been any discussion on a cybersecurity administrator at all?
Right now, our direction is we're trying not to add an additional staff person to support that. We're looking at technology solutions. The one solution we have spent the last probably 2.5 months evaluating is a system called Darktrace. And it's actually an appliance or a piece of hardware that sits on the network that monitors the millions of network transactions that occur, and it's based very much on artificial intelligence. So it continually learns the patterns of our network, and then the artificial intelligence side of it then has the capability to say this is out of the norm and puts a stop to it. One of the benefits of that type of system is it can identify those out of norm activities and stop them in a matter of milliseconds. Whereas if you have a person, they're pretty much working 8 or 9 hours a day. If this is happening at night, they will come in and review the logs potentially the next day, or we could alert them at night, but you're probably talking at least a half hour, if not a couple hours, and in like a ransomware attack, that could, at that point, have locked out all your files in that amount of time. So the reason we're going on this path is more that, the artificial intelligence solution can react to those threats significantly faster than a human could.
Okay. One last question down those lines. Do we contract for security testing at all?
We do security assessments every other year, and we're looking to do a penetration test next year. We would like to get this cybersecurity in place before we do that next level. So that's the kind of the timeline of the next audit will be that penetration test.
Thank you. And I'll ask one more time, do we have any other questions?
All right.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Next up, we have item number 3.13, which is the 2022 budget for the Senior Services Department.
Hello. Thank you for being gentle with me, my first budget season as a new director. I just want to start off by explaining, because I know we have at least one new alderperson with us. I'm not sure that it's clear to everyone that Senior Services has our budget with the city, and we also have an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization, the Friends of Uptown Social, which supports us. So on an annual basis, typically about 2/3 of the funds that we need to operate come from our city budget, and then another third comes from the Friends. Moving forward, the Friends board and myself are really focused on increasing revenues for the Friends. There's a lot of potential for us to bring in additional revenue on the Friends side in the form of charitable contributions, memberships, program service fees. Anytime basically we're taking in money as an organization, it is not going through our city budget, it is going through the Friends budget. So I just wanted to mention that. The big change in our budget this year is a significant decrease, and it's due to staffing. Right now, we have 2 full-time staff, myself and our full-time program and wellness coordinator. And we are anticipating that we will continue the 2 of us. And we have 1 vacant position, so that's the decrease in the personnel there for the operations coordinator. That position was vacated end of 2020 as we don't have a building to operate. So that's the major decrease related to personnel. And then we have other decreases essentially because we're moving some of those responsibilities over to the Friends, things like supplies, that kind of thing. Any other questions or any questions?
Alder Perrella?
Do you plan to fill that position that is vacant right now once that you move into the new building?
The plan, once we know when we'll be moving into our new building, is yes, we would be looking to fill that position.
And, may I? Thank you, Chair. How do you adjust then for example, if Friends is able, as you said, with more activities to bring in more money, more contributions and support, then do you adjust the budget from the city accordingly, or that stays the same?
Yeah, so actually, historically, just within the last year or so, the Friends and the city reached an agreement where the Friends made a direct contribution to the city to offset staffing costs. So I actually don't see that on here, but for 2021, there was an agreement that the Friends contributed $59,000 to the city to offset the expense of the program coordinator and a portion of my salary as well. And we have that agreement continuing into 2022 for about $60,000, something like that, but I don't see it reflected on this form, so that is continued. And it's a continuous conversation as we add staffing. It's very much a multi-way conversation between city budget and Friends budget. And really, I'd say the Friends have endless opportunity to be creative in funding, much more so than the city does in terms of budgeting. So the Friends are much more nimble.
Thank you.
Elder Flakey-Paneski?
So when you said 2/3 of the budget is city and 1/3 is Friends, did that 1/3 include the staffing that they
Correct.
give to the city?
Correct. So in the past, there were staff members who were employees of the city of Sheboygan, and there were staff members who were employees of the Friends, which was very complicated for a number of reasons. A lot of reasons why that's really complicated, and we don't want to do that anymore. So moving forward, as any additional responsibility is taken on by the city, the Friends are happy to kind of step in and make up that difference. Sorry, my glasses keep fogging up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 3.14, the budget for the Human Resources Department. The 2022 budget.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your attention. The Human Resources, or I have responsibilities for three budgets. The first is the General Fund, which is the Human Resources Department budget. You'll see some adjustments in salary as we have, as Caitlin explained before, had one person who is Sandy Halverson, our Payroll Administrator, move from the HR Department into the Finance Department. So that was completed and is anticipated to then stay in that configuration for 2022. There hasn't been really any significant changes in the other aspects of the general fund. Going on then to the health insurance fund. A couple notable things is that we increased the prescriptions to about $1 million as there is an increase in specialty drugs, and those are extremely expensive, and we want to just be mindful of what that may look like. And then we are also having an HSA contribution, which is that last line on contributions of $382,000. So that will help offset any kinds of deductibles that employees will have. So we're pleased to be able to keep our benefit rates pretty stable with just a slight increase and then a slight increase with the contributions from employees. Then the third fund is the Workers' Comp Fund, which has not had any significant changes in it from one year over the next. We do budget conservatively in case there is a large claim that we want to make sure that we have covered that, although our claims generally do not reach that point. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Go ahead.
I have one. If workers' comp claims aren't claimed, does the money roll over to the subsequent year's budget and accrue?
So there's the health fund budget, and then there's the workers' comp budget. So anything that stays in the workers' comp budget, and I believe that the minimum, I think, is 1.5 million, is that budget stays the same. So I don't know if I'm using the right words, but I don't believe that would roll over. It would just stay in that fund. Is that correct, Caitlin, to describe?
The funds are set aside from the general fund, so any money that goes into that fund stays in that fund unless council designates it to somewhere else.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Then I just had one then. You mentioned that the payroll administrator moving over accounted for the drop in full-time salaries for the general fund for HR?
Yes, that's a portion of it. And then we also have allocations into the staffing is allocated into the health fund and also the workers' comp fund. So there's various allocations per position. And I have those numbers if you're interested. For example, we have 2 HR generalists, so their allocation is 10% of their salaries go into the general fund, 30% goes into the health fund, and then 60% goes against workers' comp. So there's allocations for my salary as well as our administrative assistant.
That's perfect. You answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Last up, we have item 3.15, which is the 2022 budget for planning and development.
Thank you, Chair. So the Planning and Development Department, the City Development Department is made up of 2 divisions, Planning and Development and Building Inspection. The Planning and Development Division reports to the Finance Committee, and the Building Inspection reports to Licensing, Hearings, and Public Safety. So you will not see that budget at this meeting. But there's a number of budgets like Caitlin that are under Planning and Development's jurisdiction, so I'll just run through them briefly. The first one is a city development budget. There's no change in personnel. There's a consolidation of some accounts with the Building Inspection Department, so you'll see some increases in certain accounts. Those are reflected in the Building Inspection Department as decreases, and those would be things like office supplies and legal ads and those kinds of things that are kind of shared and challenging as to which budget they should be paid out of, because we're kind of all together now, versus in the past we were independent. The second is the Business Revolving Loan Fund. This is where we make job creation loans out. The Sheboygan Redevelopment Authority administers this. There's no change to that program. The next one is Housing Revolving Loan Fund. So this is for housing rehab programs. This is basically we give loans out, and then when people pay their loans back, gives us more money to roll out. So it's just this continual revolving door. Portions of city development staff time are charged against this fund. In the budget, there's some changes in allocations and actual time work. So we, as salaried employees, actually fill out a timesheet to see where our workload is each week, so that we can charge it against the grants. So the calculation of what is general fund and what is housing or CDBG changes on a year-to-year basis and is reflected in this fund. The next fund is a Community Development Block Grant. This is based on allocations received from HUD. The challenge we have with this is our program year is April 1st to March 31st, so it doesn't align with our budget calendar. So we're kind of splitting years on where we're allocating funds, but the council sees this as part of the resolution process when we're going to allocate to different funds. The new Affordable Housing Fund, so in last year's budget, that was called the Neighborhood Revitalization Fund. It has now changed to the Affordable Housing Fund. This was set up last year as a new fund to fund the extensions of tax incremental financing districts when they close under state statute. You can keep them open for 1 year and capture that revenue into affordable housing projects. So right now, the department is administering a number of housing grants, particularly the upper floor residential rehab program and a facade and landscaping program. This also funds some city department staff time, city development staff time, and it gets its money from the closures of TIDs. So the next TID on the block for closing is TID 6, which is primarily the downtown, and that will close in 2022 with some new grant monies available in 2020, some new monies available in 2023. The next one is the Redevelopment Authority Fund. This is really set up to buy and sell land. They also maintain a number of properties that are owned by the Redevelopment Authority that have not developed yet. There's no change projected in this fund. And the last fund is the Tourism Fund. So some city development staff time comes out of the Tourism Fund. We contract with Visit Sheboygan for tourism services out of this fund. Pay for 4th of July activities and different marketing and advertising out of this fund. And then new this year, we have some new software for monitoring short-term rentals that will come out of contracted services within this fund. So that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Alder Perrella?
Director, did you say that the budget for the housing loans, is that going to increase?
The budget is, yes, so the budget will increase, and it's really related to staff time for the staff that work on those, administering those loans. So when that increases, the general fund decreases.
There will be no increase on actual funds available for loans. There will be not an actual increase on loans. Availability of money for loans, for housing.
It would have an increase, it could have an increase in revenues coming into it, and it's all based on which loans are paid off during the calendar year. So some loans, the property sells and they're a deferred loan and they have to be paid upon sale, so we'll collect it there. Sometimes, people pass away or whatever it is and the property's selling. So if it's, we know what we're collecting each month from payable loans. So we have some loans that are deferred and some loans that are monthly payments. So those monthly payment loans, we can project what that's going to be. We can't project what's the revenue is going to be if we have refinances or we have payoffs of loans. So if somebody comes in and has a $25,000 loan with us and, they're going to pay it, they're going to sell their house, they have to pay us off before they sell it. So that would be revenue captured in that year. So that's why that number fluctuates.
So there is no additional funds. It's a fund that builds up itself, but
Yes,
there are no additional funds.
It's self-sufficient, and just like the business loan, we don't put any new money into it because we have substantial money revolving in based on the loans we have outstanding, that we do not have to put new block grant dollars in to kind of refeed the program.
Can I just follow up briefly? In your estimation, have those funds be sufficient for the type of requests and application that you have been receiving over time?
They have been, we've seen an uptick in applications since we've gone to the online portal. So when we instituted about 3 months ago, the neighborly software, and people don't have to come to City Hall anymore to apply for funding, we're working on 25 plus applications now, which is the first time in probably 7-8 years that we've had that many applications. So yes, I mean, the numbers, fluctuate differently, but we don't know from year to year what's going to come in the door.
And may I?
Go ahead.
And so based on the applications you received, will the city be able to work with all those applications in your estimation?
It's too early to say if all of those are going to make it through the final process, because after we do background checks and title searches, sometimes those fall off. But we have enough money in the fund to be able to fund what we have for applications, if they were all to move forward.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Chair.
Alder Flicky-Pineski.
I have a question. I noticed that the preliminary was divided by funds, and the budget proper is a general fund. Do you have a short, sweet cheat sheet of funds and dollars in the funds?
In the document that's attached to board docs, every fund has its own budget. So I don't know if that's your question. Do I have a cheat sheet for what's in the funds? No, because I log into Munis and I know what's
There it is.
documented in there, but every one of them has an independent budget.
I got it, thanks. Didn't scroll long enough.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We will then go back up to 3.5. which is still resolution number 75 of 21-22, a resolution establishing the 2022 budget appropriations and 2021 tax levy for use during the calendar year.
I'd like to ask a point of information. I would like to ask a question of the city attorney. If I would make a motion to introduce something into the budget, is this the appropriate place, or do we go to committee of the whole, or either or?
You can do it here if you want. I would recommend that if you're doing it here, that it should relate to one of the items that was dealt with, one of the budgets that was dealt with today. But you can make a change, and actually the entire budget is in front of you. It's not just this one. That's kind of the way we do it, but you can make the motion here if you would.
Or I could defer it to committee of the whole?
You could defer it to committee of the whole as well.
Perfect.
What would happen is you'd have a recommendation out of here, and then you'd be making a change to that recommendation once it gets bumped to committee of the whole.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
The resolution I just wanted to point out has the full fund tax levy in it, so I just am here to answer any final questions as it relates to any of the budgets presented or the resolution as written.
Do we have any such questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll be looking for a motion to recommend approval. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. Item 4.1 is going to be a motion to convene in closed session under exemption provided in section 19.85 1E of Wisconsin statutes, where competitive bargaining reasons require a closed session relative to the possible purchase of property at 2601 North 15th Street.
I move that we go into closed session.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This one, is this a roll call vote, Chuck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this one is a roll call vote, so Alder Ackley?
Aye.
Alder Flicky-Pineski?
Aye.
Alder Perella?
Aye.
Alder Feldy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. This will be the end of the public session of the meeting. I believe we'll be adjourning in closed session.